Surakarta, collaborating with the United Graduate Agriculture Science, UXS, Gifu University, Japan.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, before we proceed this program, today we would like to express our sincere gratitude to
Excellency, Vice Rector for Academic and Student Affairs of Sebelas Maret University, Professor Dr. Insinyur Ahmad Yunus, Master of Science.
Excellency, the Dean of UGSSA Gifu University, Professor Dr. Kenny Kilamasu.
Excellency, the invited speaker from Sebelas Maret University, Dr. Ari Natalia Probandari, Master of Public Health, PhD.
Excellency, the invited speaker from Gifu University, Professor Fumiaki Suzuki.
Excellency, the invited speaker from Wayne State University, USA, Dr. Kristanti Alpayana Penrose.
Excellency, the invited speaker from University of Greifswald, German, Dr. Deki Dagamak.
Excellency, the invited speaker from University Putra Malaysia, Dr. Muhammad Kamaluddin.
Thank you very much for your contribution to the 7th International Conference on Climate Change.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on this special morning, we have several agendas. Please allow us to read several sequences of our agendas.
The number one on agenda is the opening of international conference.
The second is singing Indonesia National Anthem, Indonesia Raya.
The third is welcoming speech by ICC Chairperson, Professor Dr. Engineer Maria Teresia Budias-Tuti, Master of Science.
The fourth is welcoming speech by Dean of UXS, Gifu University, Professor Dr. Ken Hiramatsu.
Number 5 on agenda is the opening remarks from Vice Lecturer for Academic and Student Affairs, Universitas Sebelas Maret, Professor Dr. Engineer Ahmed Yunus, Master of Science.
The sixth is plenary sessions.
Number 7 is panel discussion.
And the last is continued by the parallel sessions.
Dear audience, before we start, kindly pay attention to mute your microphone when not necessary. Please, ladies and gentlemen, pay attention to mute your microphone when not necessary.
We would like to start this program with a prayer followed by the national anthem, Indonesia Raya.
Please, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to invite everyone to invoke All Might. Please, all participants, raise your respect.
Tanah air, tanah tumpah darah.
Thank you for all your respects. Excellencies, our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Without further ado, we would like to invite the chairperson of this conference, Professor Dr. Insinyur Maria Teresia Sri Budi Astuti, Master of Science, to deliver the welcoming speech. Please, the time is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Distinguished Vice Rector for Academic and Student Affairs, Dean of Postgraduate School, and Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture, Sebelas Maret University, and also Dean of United Graduate School of Agricultural Science, Gifu University, Japan. Distinguished invited speakers, Mr. Chairman, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let us give thanks to God for health and happiness. So the 7th ICCC 2021 with the theme, Can Vaccine Protect Us Against Climate Change? Held online today, November 18, 2021.
COVID-19 pandemic teach us that climate change impact is sometimes incredible, unpredictable.
The emergence of new species or the mutation of microorganisms due to the changing ecology may be harmful to humans and other organisms. Preparing immunity on a living organism, especially humans, is a must to maintain our existence. The vaccine is vital to protect human health from the emergence of viruses and diseases that may affect climate change. But does vaccine can against climate change itself? The 7th International Conference on Climate Change focuses on the discussion about the COVID-19 vaccine roles against climate change. This conference is organized by Department of Master's Program of Environmental Science, Postgraduate School of Sebelas Maret University, collaborating with the United Graduate School of Agricultural Science, Gifu University, and followed by 152 participants from Indonesia and overseas. Thanks to Vice Rector for Academic and Student Affairs, Professor Ahmad Yunus, Dean of Postgraduate School, Sebelas Maret University, Professor Sutarno, Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture, Professor Samanhudi, and also Dean of UXAS Gifu University, Professor Ken Hiramatsu. Invited speakers, Professor Ari Probandari, Professor Fumiaki Suzuki, Dr. Kristanti Penrose, Dr. Dagamach, and Dr. Kamaluddin, also the chairman, Mr. Frankie Arya, and all of the committee. I hope this event goes well, and let's share knowledge to keep the healthy earth and free from COVID-19. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Engineer Maria Teresia Budi Astuti, for the welcoming speech. Excellencies, our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my deep pleasure to introduce the Dean of United Graduate School of Agriculture Science, Gifu University.
His Excellency, Professor Dr. Ken Hiramatsu, to deliver the opening remarks. Please, Professor, time is yours.
Nice to meet you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ken Hiramatsu, Dean of the United Graduate School of Agriculture Science, Gifu University. our school is co-organizing this ICCC. So I would like to express my gratitude to all of the participants, friends, and staffs. Well, this year, Dr. Skuro Manabe will be awarded Nobel Prize for his pioneering work on global warming. His work should be highly evaluated, but many researchers were surprised to hear that news because it was believed that his expertise is out of scope of Nobel Prize in Physics. This is an important notice that suppressing carbon dioxide and controlling climate becomes essential for humans to survive. Therefore, the meaning to hold ICCC is getting more and more important. Actually, my expertise is water resources and hydraulics. So the phrase, can vaccine protect us against climate change, is somewhat unfamiliar to me, but I agree. Negative impact by anthropogenic activities may spread over not only climate, but also ecology. This conference can alert the creeping disaster. The contribution of all the participants, distinguished guests to this conference would make our world better and progress our scientific knowledge. Sharing the insight into the recent research and cutting-edge technologies should enhance our ability, and it might give us the breakthrough ideas on our sustainability and the climate change. So I hope this ICCC would be fruitful for every participant and be great chance to approach the scientific solution for our common goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Ken Hiramatsu, for the welcoming speech. It's my deep pleasure to introduce the Vice Rector for Academic and Student Affairs of Sebelas Maret University.
His Excellency, Professor Dr. Engineer Ahmad Yunus, Master of Science, to deliver opening remarks and officially open the 7th International Conference on Climate Change 2021. Professor Dr. Ahmad Yunus, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Dean, the United Graduate School of Agricultural Science, Gifu University, Professor Ken Hiramatsu, the distinguished Dean Graduate School, Sebelas Maret University, Professor Sutarno, and the Honorable the speaker, Professor Suzuki, and also another speaker, Dr. Kristanti Penrosa, Professor Ari Purbandari, and also Professor Maria Teresia Sri Budiastuti. Thank you very much for your attending this conference. We are proud to organize this conference every year since 2016 to play a significant contribution to combat the climate change, to support the sustainable development goal achievement. Ladies and gentlemen, the Sebelas Maret University is at the national position now. UNS is included in the list university in cluster 1 in the last assessment by the Indonesian Ministry of Education and Culture. There are 15 universities in this cluster, and UNS is 11 position. At the international level, according to the QS University, UNS has listed in the World University ranking for the first time in this year. We are also currently 401 to 450 for the QS ASEAN University ranking. This year, for the first time, we are listed at the THE, Time Higher Education World University ranking. The university also concerned about the environmental and sustainable issue. Therefore, we have been placed at 201 to 300 in the world for the Time Higher Education Impact ranking. Sebelas Maret University has been seriously taking part to minimize the climate change impact by promoting environment-friendly programs such as Green Campus program and prohibiting the motor vehicle to enter the campus every month. Ladies and gentlemen, Sebelas Maret University realized that responsibility of maintaining this earth should be by everyone. Everyone plays a significant contribution to minimize a global warming of this earth. That is why our university has the annual schedule to organize such as event to discuss the finding related to earth protection. Especially this year, when the unexpected global crisis caused by the new coronavirus changed our life suddenly. We hope this conference will resulting into valuable recommendation as the solution to address the strategies how to deal with the coming environmental problem in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your participation in this conference, and we hope you enjoy it, and this conference will produce the innovative strategies for further researcher. With the officially, we open 7 international conference on climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Engineer Ahmed Yunus, Master of Science, for the opening remarks. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please, I'd like to invite all of you to open the camera for photo session. Please, dear participant, please open your camera for taking photo session. Please open your camera. Thank you for photo session.
For first slide, please open your camera. Ready to prepare? We will take the photo sessions. Ready? 1, 2, and 3. Okay, thank you. For the next slide, second slide, please open your camera. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. And the next slide, third slide, please kindly open your camera for photo sessions. Ready? One,
One,
two, and
three.
three. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, now we come to our main program, the plenary sessions, that will be moderated by Mr. Frankie Arya Saputra. Please allow me to introduce our moderator, Mr. Frankie Arya. Mr. Frankie Arya was born in Bengkulu on 2nd May 1990. His educational background, which began with completing horticulture study program from Polytechnic Negeri Lampung. Then he continued his education at Santa Rosa Junior College, California, USA, in agriculture, business, and management. His achievement is occupying the position of third place in individual sales presentation at Collegiate Agriculture Leader Springs competition at Modesto Junior College. Currently, he works at PT Swiss Seed Indonesia as a product specialist for Chile. Previously, he was also an English instructor at the International Development Academy, or IDEA Indonesia. Please allow us to invite the moderator of this conference, Mr. Frankie Arya Saputra, to continue.
Good morning, Mr. Frankie.
Hey, good morning. Hope you guys can hear me clearly.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Frankie.
Call me Arya.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I take charge with. I'm in charge for this now. Yes, right. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you all very much for the introductions. Thank you, all respected and distinguished Professor, Doctor of Sebelas Maret University, all committee, all speakers. Thank you all very much for this. To make this happen, I'm glad that I am, assigned for this wonderful job that I've never done in the past. So this is really amazing. But anyway, all right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be right now. I'm Arya, your moderator today. I hope you guys are doing well. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell a little bit about a story. So I hope you still remember about a documentary movie before the flood, where Nat Geo featuring Leonardo DiCaprio. So basically, Leonardo DiCaprio was traveling and he to visit and to talk to people who are working on mitigating climate change, and also visiting those who are affected by climate change. And there's one particular interview where he interviewed Mayor of Miami Beach, Philip Levine, and how Miami at that time is trying to deal with the rising sea level. And he said, it's really cool. He said, the ocean is not Republican, the oceans is not Democrats. So I think about climate change. So climate change isn't, climate change is not Republican, climate change is not Democrat. And climate change, when it changes. And we'll know for decades that climate is changing. And yet we made it worse by speeding up the process of climate change. We all know that it affects everything that lives on planet Earth. The global pandemic has disrupted our daily life, our health, our economy, our businesses, our educations, our environment, and more importantly, the future generations, our precious children. Our government, Indonesian government, surely have done as much as they could by providing free vaccine for their citizens. In Indonesia, there have been around 73 million people that have been vaccinated twice based on Minister of Health data. Yet there's still a few numbers of people in our communities who don't believe in vaccine for various reasons. Therefore, today we have invited speakers with their expertise to shed light on the issues of vaccine, climate change, and the future of humanity. So welcome everyone to Sebelas International Conference on Climate Change, where we invited speakers from various fields of expertise to discuss about our main story today: can vaccine protect us against climate change? Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to all our speakers that have come today. Our first speaker is Dr. Ari Natalia Prabandani. Dr. Prabandani from Sebelas Maret University. Good morning, Dr. Prabandani.
Hello, good morning, Arya.
Good morning, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
I'm doing fine, cool. Our second speaker is Dr. Fumiyaki Suzuki from Gifu University, Japan. Dr. Suzuki Sensei, good morning. I think you're still, your microphone is still muted. I can't hear you.
I forgot.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to join you today.
Thank you, Suzuki
Yeah.
Sensei. I should have said Ohayo gozaimasu.
Ohayou gozaimasu.
Ohayo gozaimasu. Our third speaker, thank you, Suzuki Sensei. Our third speaker is Dr. Penrose from Wayne State University, Detroit, Michigan. Good. I think it's good evening, I guess.
It
Is it
is.
good?
Good evening.
It's good evening. Good evening.
Thank you for having me again.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
my
you.
second conference that I've been involved with, but
Yeah.
I'm glad that I can
Yeah.
participate these times as well. So good evening and good morning for everybody out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Our fourth speaker is Dr. Dagamach from University of Greifswald, Germany. Is Dr. Dagamach here already?
Yes.
Oh,
Hello.
There you go.
Good morning to everyone.
hey, good
Nice to be
morning.
part of the International Conference on Climate Change. Nice to
Yeah.
meet you, Arya.
Nice to meet you, Dr. Dagamach. I didn't hear, I have not heard about you. I haven't heard from you since we rehearsed, I think yesterday.
Oh yeah.
So,
It's quite a very busy.
yeah.
I'm now here in the Philippines, and we're
I see.
doing quite a lot of things here. So
I see. I was worried that you were still in Germany because I was, searching on Google what time is it now in Greifswald,
Yeah.
Germany. It should be, early dawn, I guess, right?
Yeah. If I'm in Germany, but now
Yeah.
I'm in the Philippines, so I'm
And
1
you're in the
hour ahead of
Philippines. Now
you
it's-
guys.
Yeah, same. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Dr. Dagamach.
All right.
Our fifth, last but not least, Dr. Kamaluddin from University Putra, Malaysia. Assalamualaikum, Dr. Kamaluddin.
Halo, assalamualaikum. Good morning to all.
Good
How are you?
morning. Good. We're good, Doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have introduced you to 5 speakers, but I just want to give you, a little bit note. First is we'll only have one plenary session here, where all speakers that I've mentioned will present their, their knowledge, their expertise, their research, and right off the bat, when the speakers are done, all the speakers are done with the presentation, with their presentations, we will proceed to Q&A sessions. So if you already something in mind, don't forget to address your questions to each speaker by leaving your questions on chat column if you are not comfortable asking the question directly, or if you are comfortable asking directly, you can unmute your microphone to ask questions directly to our speakers. So to all participants, please wisely use the microphone so that this conference run well. Thank you for your cooperation. All right, everyone, I'd like to invite you to our first speaker, Dr. Ari Natalia Prabandani from Sebelas Maret University. A little bit about her, she earned her PhD from Umeå University, Sweden. She is a lecturer in public health at the Faculty of Medicines, Sebelas Maret University. She's published numerous books and other published works nationally and internationally, and her field of expertise is public health. Please help me welcoming Dr. Prabandani. Time and place are yours. Dr. Prabandani.
Thank you, Arya. Good morning, everyone, and perhaps also good evening for everyone that access from Europe or other countries. It is a great opportunity to present some ideas about climate change and health system resilience in this important conference. Next slide, please. Yeah, during my presentation, I would highlight three aspects. First, we discuss about climate change and human health. And then I would like to also give some overview about health system resilience and its connection with climate change. I would highlight also the issues about vaccine in the context of health system resilience, and we discuss about the future direction. Please, slide. Okay, let's start with the definition about climate change. United Nations already defined climate change as a long-term shift in temperature and weather patterns. It's actually a natural process, but since 18th century, human is a central actor to the change of temperature and weather in the world. And in the last decade, it is recorded that as a warmest temperature and weather in global context. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is some data about the heatwave exposure among children as well as among elderly in global level. We can see in the last 10 years, in the last decades, there are a lot of increase of number of countries that suffer from heatwave exposure. We can see that. And then next slide, please. Excuse me, can I have the next slide, or I can show my slides by my computer? Okay, so let me just. Yeah, so this is some data that relate in the last 10 years. There are a number of countries that have exposure of heatwave among children as well as the elderly. And also there are actually other vulnerable groups that relate to the impact of climate change in addition to elderly and children, which are tourists, coastal inhabitants, farmers, fishermen, and the indigenous people. So now we would like to answer this question. What have been known about the connection between climate change and human health? And this is a hypothesis from Watts et al. That the climate change will affect indirectly to health as well as indirect relationships. So climate change can change the environment, including the acidification of ocean, raise average and extreme temperatures, outer rainfall patterns, sea level rise, extreme weather, and other air pollutants. And it will impact to the health of the human, including the phenomenon of undernutrition, impact on mental health, cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease, harmful algal blooms, and also vector-borne diseases. And this is also some hypothesis proposed by Heldon et al. About the impact of climate change to children's health. It's also the same pattern with the previous one, that climate change will impact to the children's health through direct effect as well as indirect effect. And both direct and indirect effect will impact to the health of the children, including increase of respiratory diseases, increase of infectious diseases, mental health, and other health effects. I would like to use several evidence from South Asia to describe about the impact of climate change to health. From Sen et al., that's a review published in BMG in 2017. there are some evidence in some countries in South Asia. I pick only 3 among the countries. We can see here, actually, there are similar pattern in the 3 countries. For the direct impact of climate change, the countries, Afghanistan, India, Bhutan, already experience of the illnesses associated with the weather, the cold weather due to frost and cold spell in Afghanistan, as well as heat stress in India, and also like floods, flash floods in Bhutan. And for the indirect impact, there is increased incidence of waterborne diseases like cholera, typhoid, diarrhea. That's happened in Afghanistan as well as in other countries in Asia. And there is also an increase of incidence of vector-borne diseases such as malaria and leishmaniasis. That's happened in the 3 countries that I present in this slide. So this is also another data from the global level. It shows that in the last 20 years, there's an increase of health-related deaths affected by household air conditioning in elderly. So when there is an increase of household air conditioning utilization, there is also an increase of carbon dioxide emission, and in synergy, we can see an increase of mortality among elderly due to household air conditioning. So I think it shows that there is a trend of impact of health, particularly during the last 20 years due to climate change. This is also a data from global level that represent the increase of incidence of some diseases that relate to vector-borne diseases like dengue and malaria due to problem of environmental that influence the mosquito community, and it will impact as well to incidence of the disease. And also the increase of incidence of waterborne diseases like Vibrio cholera and Vibrio bacteria as the source of the disease. So here, there are also some argue that in addition to the increase of waterborne diseases and mosquito-borne diseases, there will be also an increase of vaccine-preventable respiratory airborne diseases. So change of environmental, change of ecological system will influence also the pattern of the disease in the future. And when we talk about antimicrobial resistance, there is also some arguments that climate change will change the patterns of antimicrobial resistance, that it's led to emergence and re-emergence of infectious pathogens. So that's the challenge in the future of human health due to climate change. And when we talk about the disease that are not infectious, it's non-communicable diseases, there's also some hypothesis that the death attribute with the imbalanced diets and weight will be increased in the future because of the change of diet patterns. And we can see here, among the countries with high human development index that's happened. So climate change also influence the countries with high development index, particularly in non-communicable disease pattern. So when we talk about another non-communicable disease, which is mental health, climate change will also affect to the mental health due to increase of mental disorder. So that's some data that show us, that gives some lesson to us about the potential effect of climate change to human health. And now we discuss about how the health system should adapt the climate change. So let's discuss first about the definition of health system. Health system is consists of 6 building blocks, 6 components, which are service delivery, health workforce, information, medical product, vaccine and technologies, financing, leadership, and governance. So the 6 building blocks should be function well in order to improve health of population. So we can use this framework, the health system framework, to see about the challenge of climate change to human health and how we should anticipate or we should adapt to that challenge. So actually good health system should be resilient. It means that the health system should be able to respond to crisis, should be able to maintain the core function, should be also able to be reorganized when it needed. So when we discuss the impact of the climate change to health, I think what strategy that we should build together is improving the resilience of the health system. So here about the financing to adaptation of climate change to human health, we can see still some gaps. There are increase of commitment for financing among countries with high development index. However, we can see still low commitment for financing the impact of climate change to health among the countries with medium and low human development index. And in terms of the health services, we have to aware that health services or health sector also contribute to the climate change. A study in global level among the OECD countries, China and India, revealed about carbon footprint for the healthcare sectors, which compose of 5% of the national carbon dioxide footprints. It means that healthcare services also contribute to the climate change phenomenon. And also another study by Harris et al. Showed that treatment of disease also can reduce carbon footprint higher than disease prevention and promotion. So it means that actually in the future, we should promote more disease prevention and promotion, including vaccination. So in the future, we should address the increasing probability of infectious diseases by development of more vaccines. So vaccine will play the important role in the future to adapt the climate change. And in regard to the human resources in relation to health, some studies also highlight about lack of knowledge of health professionals in regard to the climate change and the impact to human health. So it means that some strategies for educating the students in health studies should be conducted to adapt and to mitigate the climate change impact to human. And this is some data also in the global level. We can see here that awareness of the health professional is some items related to the concern about climate change is still suboptimal. So we have to increase also awareness among the health professional. Among the community, that's the same things. Some studies from Hathaway and Maybach in 2018 showed that there were 8 studies in non-English speaking countries, and the studies found that awareness of climate change among the community is to be low. So these are some evidence that give us some lessons. Climate change can be a stroke to health system due to higher burden of morbidity and mortality. And we have to build health system resilience. We have to improve that. We have to strengthen that in relation to adaptation of climate change. Awareness of climate change is still lacking, so it should be addressed in the future. And of course, we need multi-sector approaches to mitigate and adapt the climate change and its impact to human health. So for the future direction, there are some action to be addressed, should be planned and should be implemented. Well, when I use the framework of health system building blocks for health service delivery and medical product, vaccine, and technology. I think in the future, in order to adapt to climate change impact to human health, we have to improve readiness of service delivery to adapt higher burden of communicable and non-communicable diseases. On the other hand, health services should be reformed to be more adapted to climate change, for instance, by building green, efficient energy, passive cooling, heating, ventilation strategies, which is usually something essential for the structure of service delivery. And use of e-health or mobile health or digital health. There's something innovations that we should pursue in the future to adapt to climate change. And for health workforce, I think training for healthcare staff, including the revised curriculum that include climate change issue for medical students, I think that's a very important things. And we have to strengthen surveillance system so that we can develop early warning system for the climate change as well as its impact to health. And of course, developing policies, strategies, plan, including financing to adapt climate change impact with intersectoral collaboration, including private sectors. So public communication and awareness should be strengthened. Research innovation and sharing best practices should be more intensified. And we have also to create guideline training integration into the curriculum for medical and public health training. So this is some modeling conducted by Homer et al. That actually innovation like e-health or m-health will reduce the air pollution. So it will reduce the carbon dioxide footprints from healthcare services. For instance, we can do video consultation, telehome care, remote public health education, virtual visit, remote diagnostic, e-prescription, or e-medical record. So it should be explore its potential in the future. And another study also argued that the carbon emission produced by telemedicine system is to be very, very low in comparison to the emission saved from travel reduction. So we really hope that Indonesia will take an important role in this action, because this year Indonesia will be in the presidential of G20. And there's a statement also from Jokowi, the president of Indonesia, that Indonesia wants G20 to set example in handling climate change. So we really hope that concrete action will be produced and then Indonesia also take the lead in that action. So in the proposed action points, advocacy should be done to improve political support to mitigate and adapt climate change in the health system. We have to have massive public health education about climate change. We have to create early warning system to measure climate change and its impact to health. We have to reorient the healthcare service to reduce the carbon footprint, and research on the impact of climate change will be essential as well. So vaccination will be something important in the future. We hope that if we do more promotive and prevention of disease, including vaccination, it will be one of the action to reduce the impact of climate change to population. Thank you very much. I give back time to Arya. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Prabandani, for the presentations. It was eye-opening as a starter of this conference. First, I'd like to summarize what Dr. Prabandani just said. First, she explained to us about how climate change affects human health. Examples such as the natural phenomena such as the heat wave, and then the emergence of waterborne diseases, such as waterborne diseases, mosquito-borne diseases, respiratory diseases, emerge and affect people in different part of the world, and especially affect those the weakest among our population, especially elderly and children. And the countries such as Afghanistan has suffered from illness due to frost, and India, mortality and morbidity. The case of mortality and morbidity is high due to heat stress, and Bhutan also had a similar, a similar trend where there's a landslide and waterborne diseases. And then Dr. Prabhanan also mentions about the health, the health sector health system resilience and climate change. How Dr. Prabhanan explained about the framework of health system building blocks, such as from service delivery, health workforce, information, medical product, vaccine and technologies, financing, and legislative governance. It's all to improve health, responsiveness, social and financial protections, and improve efficiency, to improve quality, safety, and access to coverage. And but at the same time, we're still, in a health system, in health public system, still facing some challenges. The first challenge is the spending that is still low. The health service, however, health service, second is health service. Health service is also contributing to carbon footprint. And the third challenge is how health professionals, those who are work in health systems, still lack of knowledge and how climate change could affect human health. And also other communities in non-English speaking countries such as Tanzania, the awareness of climate change is still low. So therefore, they need a future direction for how to mitigate climate change. So the future directions will be based on health system building block first is service delivery and medical product, vaccines and technologies, how to improve readiness of service delivery, building green efficient energy and use the health. Second is health workforce. So the action that can be taken is training on healthcare staff on climate change and its impact, information in this information sector to strengthening surveillance system of the impact of environmental data and health impact to develop early warning system. In the financing sector and leadership governance to developing policies or strategies or plan to including financing scheme to adapt climate change impact with intersectoral collaboration. And the government of Indonesia will host, as we know, government of Indonesia will host G20, and we are hoping that Indonesia will, as President Jokowi said, we will set example to handle climate change. The proposed actions point that we could all take with us is to provide advocacy to improve political support to mitigate and adapt climate change in health system. Second is the massive public health education to increase awareness on the impact of climate change to health. Third, creating early warning system to measure climate change and its impact on health. And fourth, reorientation of healthcare service to reduce carbon footprint. Fifth, research on the impact of climate change to health in specific population and the strategy and innovation to address climate change. That's all. I hope I did well. I hope, Dr. Prabhandani, how did I do? Good.
Very well.
Very well. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my goodness. All right. Let's move on to our. Thank you, Dr. Prabhandani. Let's moving on to our second speaker, Professor Dr. Suzuki from Gifu University. But let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Suzuki. Dr. Suzuki earned his PhD from University of Tsukuba, Japan, He is an emeritus professor and fellow in charge of international affairs of Gifu University. His field of expertise is biochemistry, especially in the field of training. And his work has been cited a lot by a lot of researchers, maybe a lot of researchers.
And the important point. Yeah, okay. Productive age in the 90% and the elderly and so around 10%. So Indonesian people, they are active. Indonesian and the country is so active rather than Japan. Okay, and okay, so the middle panel and so then the UNS Academy. Almost the people have already vaccinated and finished, and so even so, then the 90% of and the excuse me, 5% people were infected in the COVID-2. Okay, but in the hopefully, so they declare the cured many, almost people then they recover. Congratulations. So then this is in so evidence, and so then the vaccine and so important to the recover against to the infected. This is like in the COVID-19. Okay, so next one. Okay.
I think we're having an internet connection problem.
The under is better than the signal. What I said, I might oh, so long way. Then the way the activity, so the thing ties, so the knowledge. Next slide, please. Next. Please show us in the next slide. Okay. So the problem then, so then the vaccine, and so then the against to the balance, and so balance is sometimes, and so then the change or so many antibodies and so specificity different. So tactile. So describe so divide in 3 types. And if it's counting, but in the low, so weak, then the vaccine, so then the decrease. So to this and so then the property of a vaccine. Okay, next one, 6th page, please. Okay, so then the biology and so and about in the COVID. SARS-CoV-2 in the undergoing events refer to the, I don't know, any in the eye infection, and so the goes on. So very difficult in the using in the single body. That means a vaccine is my mind. This is quite important. Next one. Please show. Okay. Human beings, they must be exist with virus. Human being history background we know. So and in the delivery virus are it is important. So we have to coexist the virus. Okay, please, next one. Next slide, please. Okay, this is our challenge. Our means is so then the human and challenging. So for in the 2021, Liu and it all and reported this one. Maybe you know, and the glutathione peroxidase, okay, in the lung. This enzyme they held in the selenium. This is so then the quite important in the metal. This is olden. Selenium contained in the so then the important enzyme and the glutathione peroxidase. And so indicated here in the GROS. Okay, this is so then the reductive and so then form. So the ROS and here utilized in the glutathione oxide type 2 with the reduction. This is quite, if it stopped in this enzyme, blocked in by the virus one so and so, in the lung. This is first stage, and we observed in the patient infected by the COVID. So COVID-19 state, okay, in the initial stage. Maybe you can, oh, now then still unstable in the internet. Okay, please, and the next one. So this slide shows us the mechanism of SARS-CoV-2 infection. Okay, the CoV-2 is one of the RNA the virus. So then the genetic information and coded in the mRNA. Okay, this and the virus just interact within the membrane in the host cell, and then penetrate, fuse and penetrate in the host cell, and then proceed to and then release. Okay, so then the story in the vaccine in this today's presentation. Next slide, please. It's okay. Okay, good. So then right now, then the available and the vaccine against the COVID-19, all and the vaccine and the source of in the spike region of the peptide sequence coded RNA. This RNA injected in the human and then translated in our body, and then proceed to the antibody against the spike region. That means in the vaccine system. Okay, but in the fusion penetrate in the soil, insert in the virus to in this host cell, a little bit explain. See this one, spike region in the color, green color, this region fused to in the ACE2, that means receptor in the spike region. This also associate in this region within the ACE2. This is one of the enzyme activity held, but then so after once in the associate, and then in the catalyst in the proceed to fuse to in the insert in the cell. Okay, so then the antibody, so producing in the body is so then the like in the green part of green the region according so then not peptide and the source of an RNA vaccine. This is the first time in trial in the human. Okay, next one, please. Okay, so under then the disease and the proceed, and so then some apoptosis or S2 downregulation occur, and so on and so. I have studied in the renin-angiotensin system. So then the S2, that means so then the converting enzyme. If in the blocked in this enzyme, a little bit in the disorder in the circulation, in the lung and the blood circulation, so on and so. Okay, this is so then the important point. So next one. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay, so then the summarize and so forth in the explained in the slide. The vaccine just in the using against in the COVID-19 in the so specific because in so then the target in the so then the antibody against in the parts of the virus. In particular, then the target in the spike region. Okay. And the vaccine in the mutated in the person-to-person infection. So then the case by case is different. So specific. This is so specific. That means so then the powerful, but then so have in the weak point. So if in the so then the universal and or the vaccine like in the medicine to be so then the cocktail that within the vaccine is so powerful. Specific and universal action and the acted together, that means so then we open the synergetic and so then the power. Okay. In Indonesia, and so I have in here Jamu, that means the harbor plant. This is just in the so then the extract from the plant. Natural product, that's one. Okay, so this is quite important to maintain the immunity in the human body together. Okay, this is my point. Okay, please, next. Okay, so we summarize in the variety of jamu, or so many jamu available in the ASEAN or Indonesia. Like this one, so many. This is only example. And also then today's in my presentation in the focus to the andrographis and paniculata. Okay, shall we see in the next slide? Next slide, please. Okay, this one. So then in this year, the one paper I have, and so then the found this one about in the role of andrographis paniculata. This is interesting, and so for me, this and the extract and the jamu here in the so then this and the low bottle one. This one's so effective against in the SARS-CoV-2 activity, just to reduce in the that and so then the virus. Okay, this and the so plant contained in the mean effective in the compound. This one, andrographide, androglycolide, structured here. So this is so strong or tight and so then the structure. But I surprised. This structure then quite similar to the angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor available clinically in the world right now. Okay. This and so jumbo and available and in the Indonesian and some below too. I've never seen this in France, but you know so well, and maybe popular in the Indonesian or ASEAN area. In Japan, and very hard. This for me in the first time, but very interesting. This in front. So next one. This is so then the specific. How about in the so plant or food for the immune system? If immune system and the increase, we can prevent against the Sebelas or other infectious disease. Vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, tomato, spinach. Okay, this is quite important, but this is example. Other than maybe you know the green tea on the popular in the Asian area or in the world. Green tea contain in the such like the angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor like and derivative and the compound. This is so popular in Japan too. So if and every day, every morning or every night, and so we have green tea help. So maybe so then our immune system should be increased. And also then Brussels sprout. I have the first time. So this right in this figure, maybe you know so well, this is also then alpha lipoic acid. This is also then the important. One is the malnutrition in the state, and if we have this one, and so they recover. So I think, and so our agriculture and the science and scientists have to investigate it in the functionality in our food and the yield or having in the diet. Again, this is quite important. Okay, next slide, please. Other conclusion, tentatively, we know vaccine, except for 10, global, available, and modern. That's no question. But then agricultural products, moderate, but local, easily to then the catch up, and so and the traditional. That means so then the overall in our history background, every ancestor try to have and recover that in the virus and so infection. Both and possibly protect and prevent us from climate change, impact, and specific and universal too. I believe them. Okay. So next slide. Other references so many afterward, please see it. I have checked in the every almost 10 and the paper, and then refer cited in paper again, so on. So quite important and interesting and the content, and so then they describe there. Okay. So next one. So final one. Before end of my talking, I declare acknowledgement, moment, idea, moment, and please show us. And the final slide. The acknowledgement, and so then the sincerely thanks to then the Maria and our teams. That's all. Thank you very much. Terima kasih. And vielen Dank.
Okay. Arigato gozaimasu, Suzuki Sensei. Arigato, arigato. So it's interesting what you just explained to us about, the role of vaccines in jamu. And I remember just a little bit before I summarize your talk, I had a personal relationship with the what was that? It's Andrographis paniculata, aka Sambiloto. I had this personal relationship with Sambiloto. I remember when I was taking one of the course that I took in horticulture degree was herbal plant course. So the teach, I was willing to know about everything that in front of my eyes. So the teacher gave me a bunch of herbal plants such as turmeric, ginger, galinga, and other herbal plants. One of the plant that I was, I got pranked actually. I got pranked. So my teacher gave me this sambiloto. He said, "This is good for your health. This is good." So I just tried and just swallowed it. And before I swallowed it, I throw up because it's too bitter. It's too bitter.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
It's
bitter in the soul and effective. Effective.
It's so bitter, and I was just, oh my goodness. So my teacher actually pranked me because but then I realized it was sambiloto, But thank you. So let me get back to your summary of your talk. So Dr. Suzuki mentioned about how anthropogenic activities have led to significant increases in greenhouse emissions, resulting in the warming of the Earth's surface, and are based on World Health Organizations that the most significant effect of climate change on human health will be driven by infectious disease. And COVID-19, severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2, is one of the clear example of how infectious disease that was mentioned by WHO present in our, emerge or present in our life. But we need to know, but something that we need to know is that viruses and possibly other diseases as well, we can't live without virus, as you mentioned. Human beings cannot live without virus, as it is part of our microbiome, right? And so therefore, we need to do something or make effort to increase our immunity in order to cope with the climate change, especially the spread of, or the emergence or the spread of infectious disease. So you mentioned two things. You mentioned about the use of vaccines and the use of jamu or herbal plants. So, but before we get to that, we are now we are faced by challenges because of the increased use of antiviral drug. So and then it create antiviral drug resistance. And as COVID-19 spread, it also mutated or evolved. So these are two challenges that we're facing to combat or to deal with the COVID-19. So the use of vaccine is designated to enhance or boost our immune system, but it is very specific. And secondly, you also mentioned the use of herbal plants or jamu, where you really emphasize on the use of sambiloto, where sambiloto contains bioactive compounds such as andrographolide, which have significant antiviral activity against HIV, influenza A, and HSV1 without any significant cytotoxic effect at virucidal concentrations. And you also mentioned about how to boost your immunity by eating or consuming vegetables, right? Vegetables such as broccoli, cauliflowers, tomatoes, spinach contain vitamins, antioxidants, and minerals that are important to boost our immune system. And others natural compound or natural plant that we can use is green tea and Brussels sprout. Such as green tea, it contains polyphenol up to 30% of the dry weight, where Brussels sprout contain alpha lipoic acid and vitamin C. So you concluded that two things that we can do for the same thing, but for same thing, but slightly different ways of mechanism. I would say mechanism. First is vaccine. It's potent, global, and modern, but agricultural products such as jamu and other vegetables are moderate and local and traditional. So the use of vaccine combined with the, I would say, healthy consumption of vegetables and healthy consumption of jamu possibly can protect us and prevent us from climate change impact as specific and universal tools. Is that good?
That's okay. Good.
That's okay. Thank you.
Arigato.
Arigato, sensei. All right.
You're welcome.
Let's moving on to our third speaker. Our third speaker came all the way. Our second speaker came from Japan. So now our third speaker came all the way from USA. Let me introduce you to our third speaker. Her name is Dr. Penrose from Wayne State University, Detroit, Michigan. She earned her PhD from Wayne State University in political science, especially in the fields of comparative politics and public administration. She's currently a lecturer at Wayne State University. So without further ado, please help me welcoming Dr. Penrose. Time and place are yours. Dr. Penrose.
Thank you, Arya.
Yeah.
Thank you for nice word. And it's very delightful that whenever I heard presentation from Dr. Suzuki that saying that Brussels sprout is very powerful to increase the immune systems. Actually, I was so delightful. I told to my kids that because next week we will celebrate the Thanksgiving, the request is always like nose Brussels sprout moms to cook on the side dishes. So
Sure.
I was like, oh my God, I have to have them.
Now that's a good reason, that's a good reason.
Yeah, that's a good reason actually. But thank you. Well, thank you for having me again. My name is Dr. Kristanti Apayana Penrose. I earned PhD in political science and is dual degree program actually in political science and in government, and then I earned the second one in public administration. So I'm a faculty at the School of Medicine at Wayne State and Law School, and also Department of Political Science. So I adjunct professor for 3 departments right now there. What I do for living, actually, I'm attorney myself. I'm licensed in Michigan. I'm licensed also in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and also California. So basically, what I do for living is attorney. So before I start my presentations, I want to have 2 disclaimers actually. What I'm speaking right now, what I'm presenting is totally I overview from the common law. I cannot speak on behalf of the civil law because I haven't done research further, and then common law system is the one that I use in the United States. And then the second one is any cases that I presented and I brought up on this presentation is totally for the educational purposes only, not as the legal advice. So any lawyers that over there that don't use that as the precedence for your case. So without overdue, let me start my presentations. We know that a global crisis has shocked the world. It's causing a tragic number of deaths, making people afraid to live and leading to economic hardship not seen in many generations. Its effects are rippling across the world. Obviously, I'm talking about the COVID-19. But in just a few decades, the same description will fit another global crisis, climate change. And we have to agree, as awful as this pandemic is, climate change could be worse. And then from my point of view, the intersections of COVID-19, vaccine, and climate change is very complex. Some of the factors that cause climate change are also worsening the pandemic. For example, outcomes of infections are more serious in areas where population have been exposed to air pollution. This is not surprise. Air pollution is responsible for 7 million premature deaths per year, according to the WHO. Often as a risk factor for other conditions, of course, like, car gas, carbon monoxide. Indeed, we have known long that many of underlying drivers of climate change have wide-ranging repercussions of health itself. On the other hand, the pandemic response has led to prescriptions drop in air pollution. We have to agree, because people stay at home, no cars in the streets, that people got locked down many times. In California, one of the states that I live in right now, we got locked down like 8 times last year. They told, before the vaccine started to be enforced, not really enforced, is to be spread out, that's to be used, to be taken by the healthcare worker. We had discussions that it's going to be another 2 lockdown after 2021, but it didn't happen. Thanks God, because as soon as the vaccine was invented, some states like California, New York, and also Florida, that's the worst state that got a lot of COVID cases. We got privilege to get the vaccines. Then because I'm also CEO for a healthcare provider. So basically I got opportunity to have a vaccines around December probably, or the beginning December, whenever they launch the vaccines. But right now I'm ready to get the booster. So because if you work in the certain area of the high risk with the COVID-19, you have a privilege to get boosters. So back to my presentations again, the pandemic response has led to precautions drop in air pollution. By some estimate, cleaner air during the crisis has avoided 11 deaths in Europe and about 15 deaths in the United States. Globally, greenhouse gas emissions are projected to fall by 5.5% this year, a consequence of confinement of 3 billion people staying at home and corresponding economic jolt. And yet, even these massive reductions, which is decidedly temporary, will not yield a trajectory, a limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. That's what we expect, the number that should be reduced. According to the latest science, this would require a 7.6% reduction per year, which is we never achieved this number. The transformation requires a truly colossal, means it's just like living in La La Land. For the vaccines and the COVID-19, in the United States, we have a best case that why COVID-19 vaccine could not be enforced federally by each state is because we have a precedence in the past through the case Jacobson versus Massachusetts in 1905, that which is chickenpox was become pandemic in the United States. Then a federal law required every state has to get the vaccines in any levels of ages, but it could not be done for the COVID-19 vaccine is because the number of the data is not as much as chickenpox number, not data. It means that we cannot use this precedent to enforce COVID-19 vaccine to all the ages, because based on this data say that the number of the kids that got COVID is not sufficient enough to qualify the descriptions to enforce this law to rules COVID-19 vaccines to all the states and all ages. But in the past, yes, we have to agree that based on this case, the chickenpox vaccine, it was required. Actually, all states require childhood vaccines as a condition of school entry, which are demonstrated to maintain high coverage and prevent vaccine preventable disease. And then all states grant medical exemptions, and 45 states and Washington DC grant religious exemptions, which is with 15 states are also allowing physical exemption. It means that, you know, you cannot, if you bring like a letter from the mosque or the preach or your pastor that showing you cannot have the vaccines because it's against of the your religions, you can be forgiven, not forgiven, could be excluded to not get their vaccines. Back in the day in 1905, whenever chickenpox happened. But right now, the COVID-19 vaccine is kind of like a little bit enforced due to the, you know, like certain area of business, but it could not be rules as enforced as chickenpox vaccine back in 1905. Why could not be enforced? Because, well, the precedent, the state law is different. Every state, number of cases of the state are different. So it was bad in California, but it wasn't bad in Arizona, which is just cross the border. So we cannot kind of rules like that, because this is something that common law. Well, the state law is rules by law. You cannot enforce federal law like civil law, like Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, Germany, they are civil law. So basically, you can just create the statute and it could be enforced to whole nations. But we cannot regulate like that in United States, because we have like 50 states, different rules that could not be rules by federal except you pass the bills to the SNAP. So basically that's a law, different law systems that I cannot make comparisons between civil law and common law right now, because I'm speaking on behalf of the United States. And what happened right now, we have to agree in the United States to reduce to enforce kind of like COVID-19 vaccine is 71% supported company requiring COVID-19 vaccines. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commissions, which is EEOC, that rules by federal, has ruled that the business that compel employee to with the amount 500 employee in that company to submit the COVID test if you don't want to get vaccine. But they require vaccines if you want to back to work, if you have 500 employee at least. But what the effect for that kind of like bill is not even bill, is just regulations that enforced by federal institutions. There's a lot of lawsuits, and some cases is lost, some cases is win. So the precedent is different in every state. You know, whenever the company located in Atlanta, Georgia, for example, one case is that when the employee that sue because he got terminated because of he didn't want to get the vaccines because he feels that he doesn't have to get that vaccines, and end up the Supreme Court won his case. So in Atlanta, Georgia, is not enforced to require the vaccine or either to submit the COVID test every week for the employee to do so. So this regulation is not applied to Georgia. But in California, there's some case that EOC rules won over the employee case. So it's enforced that every company in California that has 500 employees, they have to get the COVID vaccines, except they can bring some evidence they cannot do COVID vaccines is because of the religious belief and also because of the health conditions. So if you can get the doctor note then saying that you cannot get the COVID-19 vaccine is because your condition, your body cannot resist with, for example, I don't know, COVID-19 vaccine probably contain of sulfur, like I'm allergic with sulfur. So anything that contain with sulfur will kill me. So basically I can bring that, the doctor note, and then I will be excluded. But the second rules that one is I have to require to get the COVID test every week to work. And I have to use the social distancing. Of course, I have to put the mask on. I have to, that's why working from home is still reliable in the United States right now. But anyhow, federal government and also state law try to regulate and encourage and mandate the COVID-19 vaccines to all the citizens, but it's not enforced as chickenpox vaccines in 1905 is because it's just different case and the data do not support to enforce and apply these regulations and precedents that we have as a law back in 1905 in these current conditions. And also currently also issue the guidance permitting employee to require influenza vaccination. So on the top of COVID-19 vaccines, the OSA, there's this maybe it's like Depkes in Indonesia. They require that another things that for the employee to back to work in place in the site, they require to have influenza vaccinations and also the COVID-19 vaccination, but it's not mandatory, but many cases so is showing that if you don't want to get vaccine and you cannot bring that to evidence from the institutions that call the exemptions to not getting vaccines, you will be terminated. Then is a lot of cases right now going on the court about you. Is that okay? Is that human rights that you get terminated because you don't want to get vaccines? Because that's a people believe, that's your body, because it's like our Bill of Rights is you cannot be enforced even anything that it's like you cannot rule somebody's life by doing some things that against Bill of Rights in the United States. So people claim is whatever they did is not any freedom to speech, to not having COVID vaccines. But right now it just depends on how the state interpret the law, interpret that precedents in the past, but still colleges and university require high vaccine coverage to back to in-person learning. Like even I teach online because I live in California and my university in Michigan, I still required to have influenza vaccines every year, and also the COVID-19. Then I have to get boosters tomorrow actually. So speaking of which, that the rules still regulated like in a small community, but not federal. So it's very hard to see how these vaccines can reduce the number of climate change, is because it seems there's no related there for me to given the number how many people get vaccine right now. Maybe it's around 17 million right now in United States, can cover the impact of the climate change, global warming, or whatever the issue related to climate change in the United States, because the number is so low to make the comparisons for me. Then I don't want to run statistics against this number. We don't, you know, the probability is too low. And for my expertise as the I'm talking about political science, so I have two majors. So in the terms the in-person learning right now, even though some research showing that the impact of the COVID-19 is not too much to the young kids or young adults, especially, but it seems that whenever school starts reopen, the school districts require the students to have the masks on still. They have social distancing, even though it's very hard to rules the kids, you know. And then also they require as much as they want, they can do the COVID-19 vaccines. My son, he doesn't want to get the vaccines, and I cannot enforce him actually. But my daughter, she's a little bit older because she's in high school. Then the high school is more strictly, and then the number is like they more have an activities. So the high school is more require the students to have the vaccine. So it depends on the age number, even though the research not showing too much that the COVID-19 impact too much number to the kids. And what I'm trying to say over here also, just the small regulation is can be rules the number of the people take the vaccine? No, because there are two assumptions. They can play their rules. They can use these assumptions, which is you can get from the your religious institutions, either from the mosque, either from church, either from synagogue, or whatever the religious belief that you have. You cannot be enforced to get that one. But yes, you should bring your COVID test once a week, which is I end up like people, why have to, you know, bother with, like, you know, it's very hard. Last year, because I work as a CEO at the healthcare provider, so I have to get COVID test. When pandemic happened, I have to get the COVID test because I have to visit the hospital or the schools that my client were. But I decided whenever they required to have the COVID vaccine, I just like, okay, I don't want to back, and every time I back, have to get poked. Every time is very discomfort. So I decided to get the vaccine. Anyway, I believe that vaccine is prevent you. I'm not people's like against the vaccines. So, but back to the legal mandates, it signal clear policy support for immunizations, which is vaccine, which can also increase resources of vaccine infrastructures. Yet mandate can undermine public support, creating backlash, and even reducing vaccine uptake. Mandate may be useful in the future, maybe, but again, you cannot enforce the law if not ruled by safety data number. So what happened here, law is not like we making law over years is slightly different with the country with the civil law like Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia. But we have to pass to the state law, and then after that you can brought that to Senate, which is you have to get the majority voting for that one. It's a long road to get the bill passed. It's probably 5-6 years. Maybe is the COVID-19 is not big issue again. So so it's a little bit difficult to imply the mandate of COVID-19 vaccine in the United States because we have 50 states that have different rules, and also to brought up the bill to the Senate is not easy task. You have to get 50% pass the bills, and then you have to get 2/3 of the majority Senate. And we were talking about Senate is not like, is to Democratic and Republican Party and the minority and majority and who run the Senate. So it's not something that easy to imply like next year or 2 years. We are talking about 5-6 years ahead, and then to enact the law in the United States is also expensive because we have like a lot of majority commodity also for interest people in political party. But okay, I have to agree that immunization or vaccine coverage sufficient to achieve community immunity. We reap enormous health, social, economic benefit. But to rule the vaccine mandate in the public support is really, really hard to achieve that one. It's because it's expensive and have special high risk and high value setting. Is not, you have to come with the safety driven data with longer term safety data that is part of the comprehensive package, which takes like years to get that passed. So I still don't believe that to regulate the vaccines as the mandatory, like back in 1905, whenever chickenpox pandemic happened, based on the Jacobson versus Massachusetts in COVID-19 vaccines, could not be happen, especially in the United States. So one thing I'm trying to highlight this way is I still not believe that I still believe there's no correlation enough between mandatory vaccine and climate change because it's two different things. Well, vaccine probably it's really helpful to get back to the society, back to slightly normal. I'm saying that I still using masks to go to the grocery. I still, have a social distancing. I still prohibit my kids to be around elderly just because, it's just for the precautions, but I still believe that vaccine, it does help, but it's not totally answer for the climate change solutions. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it, Dr. Penrose?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you, Ari.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Penrose. Just a little bit to kind of before to what she said. So pandemic COVID-19 cases really affected all part of our lives, which really created chaos in my words. But the positive side of that climate change is because due to emergency public activity restrictions, the air pollution dropped. And although the drops still could not meet the annual global emissions, which is 7.5%, in relation to pandemic and climate change, the example that ever occurred in 1905, where the disease of chickenpox disease, chickenpox disease spread. The chickenpox, the U.S. The U.S. government mandated that every kids, or I think is it everyone, I guess, get chickenpox vaccine.
It's not only kids actually, Arya, it's everyone's. Like
It's
all,
everyone. Okay, cool.
everyone.
It's everyone was mandated to get chickenpox vaccine. It's in 1905. But the case is quite different from what it is currently happening with the COVID-19 vaccine. So although I think it's Joe Biden. No, it's Joe Biden, the president, right? I think rule that 71% or 2/3 of the workers have to get vaccinated, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's not mandatory. It's not regulated.
It's not. Yeah, it's not mandatory. It's not regulated.
Encouragements that the company with 500 employee, you have to get the vaccines.
Yes.
If not, you cannot back to work in person, which is everything's open, so everybody wanna back to work, but some people they have restrictions to do that. So basically, it's not like you cannot really enforce to do that.
Yes. So yes, it's not a mandatory, but it's an encouragement that everyone, especially workers, should get vaccinated. Although, I mean, if the COVID-19 vaccine became mandatory, it could cause some backlash from society because of religious beliefs and also certain health conditions. So based on what Dr. Brendo said, as what she is experiencing now, that the person who has not gotten vaccinated yet, they must get COVID tests every week, whenever they go out, whenever they go to work, I guess, or public space, or to hospital. So, and Doug Penrose mentioned that there's no correlation between mandatory vaccinations and climate change, although she believed that vaccines could, in the long run, could be benefit for society, for our economy, and for our health, and all of us in general. Is that it? I guess that's it, Dr. Penrose.
Yeah, thank you for Arya.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Penrose. All right, everyone. I hope you guys are still staying with us, because we still have two other speakers that are waiting to present their ideas. Let's moving on to our fourth speaker. Our fourth speaker is Dr. Dagamach. I'm sure it's Dr. Dagamach. Dr. Dagamach, are you there?
Yeah, it sounds right. All right.
Yeah. Dr. Dagamach, I'm so sorry. I don't know much about. I haven't received your resume, so I'm so sorry.
It's fine.
Yeah, but he's a doctor and professor of biotechnology at the University of Greifswald, Germany. So without further ado, please help me welcoming Dr. Dagamach. Dr. Dagamach, time and place are yours.
All right. Good morning, everybody. And I'm very happy and honored to be invited as one of the speakers for the 7th International Conference on Climate Change. So it is with great acknowledgement that I would say my highs and hellos to the ones that invited me, to Dr. Kumaria and probably to Mrs. Sumani, who helped me a lot because I was a very busy guy over the past weeks. So my apologies, but I'm very happy to learn a lot from our previous speakers regarding climate change. So I am Dr. Nikki Dagamach, and I am formerly affiliated at the University of Greifswald at the Institute of Botany and Landscape Ecology with a background on molecular ecology. So I have now a postdoc and currently a returning scientist here in the Philippines, where I'm working now on a different field, but I still work on the evolution of different organisms, particularly on fungus-like protists, and trying to see how they respond to the different changing climates in the world. So, but for now, I would like to divert a little bit about the things I will discuss and probably share with our audience. And I would like to share the things I have learned over the past years. So it's not really about biotechnology, but more of machine learning. And I hope I can be allowed to share my screen. Okay, perfect. There you go. So can somebody confirm if my screen are all clearly seen? Hello?
Hello, Dr. Ligamach. Yes, yes. You
Yes,
can see
all
it.
right,
Yes, you can
perfect.
see it.
So yes, so this will be my presentation will be all about. So I would like to introduce to you a method that I used, particularly a very useful method when we talk about issues related to climate change. We have issues about the pandemic, and now the global world is aware about the so-called One Health agenda, wherein we are very particular on issues related to human health, animal health, and environmental health. And these are myriad of factors that are actually influenced by, and we see how these myriads of factors are interrelated. When we were surprisingly caught by the pandemic 2 years ago, we were surprised in a way that what caused the pandemic, what caused the zoonotic diseases that probably, where did these zoonotic diseases came from? And this is basically what my talk will be going to be about, since my background is more on the biology and ecology. And I would like to share with you a particular method wherein we try to predict or model potential distributions of species. And I would like to share with all of you how I've used this particular method to the line of organisms that I have been working on for the past 10 years, which are the slime molds. So basically, what will be this talk going to be about? I hope that everyone is not yet bored, and I'll try my best to hopefully be much energetic.
Yeah, we're fine. I know you're very energetic.
Perfect. All
Yeah.
right. So
Carry on.
this talk will be all about maps. All right. Maps, but with a little twist. All right. Because these maps that I will present to you are products of different machine learning algorithms that typically shows potential niches and distributions of species and how their range are actually changing. And actually, these maps can also show predictions on how they can be distributed over different climate change scenarios. So let me start by probably going back to the basics regarding niches and distributions, wherein we're very particular that for biological organisms to thrive, they have a certain tolerance limits. All right. Some organisms are influenced by different multi-factors in the ecology and in the environment. Like, for example, this diagram is a perfect example. We know that a frog will have a certain tolerance limit. They cannot live in a temperature that is either too cold or too hot, or even in in a place where there will be too wet or too dry. So there's just a specific idea wherein a comfort zone for a particular organism is known, right? And that's how they are distributed in any types of location. So this is basically the background of the niche and distribution. But let me give you a more focused discussion about what's the niche concept it's all about. This is actually a more simplified version wherein we talk about the BAM concept, okay? When we say BAM concept, a niche is where, for example, the bee is represented by a place, all right? Or a locality wherein that place is actually biotically suitable for any organism to survive, particularly a condition wherein there is no competition and there are actually mutualistic relationship occurring in nature. Also, a comfort zone for any organism is where their abiotic conditions are suitable. May it be in form of temperature, precipitation, and annual rainfall, and other abiotic factors that we can name. And lastly, it's not just about these biotic and abiotic factors that we need to consider. We also need to consider that that organism is capable of going to that place. And hence, movement is a very important factor to consider, because sometimes, even if that place is suitable for that organism to survive or to live in, they are not invaded because of some, for example, geographical barriers or other reasons why they cannot invade that particular area. So this is basically the whole concept of the niche, wherein you have a biotically suitable, abiotically suitable place, and you are able to actually move to that location. Okay, and the ideal place is, of course, the one that is in the center, right? That's where you are expecting all these organisms to survive or to live into. And what we see here, okay, there are two more concepts I would like to discuss. It's about, for example, the fundamental niche concept, wherein we consider, right, the full spectrum of the abiotic factors, wherein, so here, the A here is actually the fundamental niche, wherein obviously, okay, all these abiotic environmental conditions are suitable for that organism to survive. But in reality, so it's like the expectation, but in reality, what we have are the so-called realized niche, okay, wherein we are only given, all right, this small part of that area, all right, where that organism is expected to survive, because that area in the middle is what I was mentioning, biotically suitable, and it was able to move from that location. Okay, so given that idea of niches, all right, we now know that because of that niches, we will have different distributions of any biological organisms. And basically that's what will be my talk is going to be about. It's about using computer algorithm to predict potential habitats within a particular landscape that have at least correlated or similar environments to the area that have been already reported from previous studies. Okay, that's basically what my talk is going to be about, nothing more. However, these informations that I will probably share with you will have a very good ecological knowledge for us, especially for many people who are now aware about climate change, the climate change scientists, the data scientists, right? We need to show to them how predictions and models will be in the future, so that we can try to convince more people that, hey, climate change is happening and conservation is of urgency. Once you affect, for this climate change are affecting not just the environment, but how different organisms and diseases are now actually affecting the world. That's what we see with the global pandemic. So another basic things that I would like to clarify are the different approaches when we do modeling. So basically the whole talk will be just about correlative modeling. In this type of modeling, what we do is that we know the specific location. We have previous records of occurrence of a particular organisms of our interest. And we are just going to find or predict what other areas in the world or in a particular locality based on your research question, you want to find these organisms, or putatively these organisms will be expected to thrive. Okay, that's basically what the correlative modeling approaches is. The other hand, mechanistic modeling is more robust in a way that we need to have a complete biological understanding, most specifically physiological responses of a biological organisms, not only to its development, but how it responds to its environmental factors. And for these modeling to work, it needs to have a lot of basic knowledge and a lot of basic information. And especially now that many organisms are not yet well understood. So most of the modeling approaches, especially when you try to do your Google Scholar, you type species distribution modeling or environmental niche modeling, most of those modelings are associated with or using correlative approach. All right, but nowadays I was so surprised that there are already a lot of in silico computer analysis that has been done, or modeling analysis has been done for the past years, maybe because now we're limited to do a lot of field studies because of the pandemic. But most of the publications that have been ongoing for the past years, they are now switching to do most of these computer generated models. Okay, so how does species modeling work? So probably I will just give you a very simple idea how this modeling works. For example, you have two variables, and all of those variables in a map, you use a grid, right? And then for this grid with specific sizes of the grid, you find the grid where that specific organism was found. All right, so meaning those organisms, or that positive sign that you're seeing, is the grid where that organism was found or found occurring based on the variable that you are working on, especially whatever type of abiotic variable. It can be temperature, precipitation, annual rainfall, name it. Okay, so, but in reality, there are a lot of factors that influence the environment. It's not just one variable. It can be a myriad of variables. So for example, here you have two variables. So when you apply or combine those two variables in a new grid, this will be the expected places, right, where you will find them. You won't find it here, even if in variable 1 it was positive, but in variable 2 it was negative. So the model will say it will not be found here because it's now considering all the possible correlations of variables where they were expected to be found. Okay, that's basically basic or simple pipeline of how SDM works, but in reality, it's more complex than that, right? So it's because what I will show you is that occurrence data is easy to be found, right? But there are a lot of environmental data that can be used, right? That are readily available in many databases. And what you do is that you put those organisms' occurrence records on a map and overlay them on different maps with different environmental factors. Usually the maps that you use are raster data, meaning they have a particular quantitative information that the model will be using. And at the end, the model will be using specific algorithms. And at the end, it will now provide you some predictive maps. All right. And later, in a few minutes, I will give you some case studies wherein this SDM actually was used. All right. So, however, a very important thing to remember is that obviously the lure of technology, particularly when we hear modeling or in silico computer assisted studies, is that everybody was like, yeah, this is something, this will be the future, machine learning, artificial intelligence, big data science. All right. However, I always remind people that in modeling, all right, whatever type of data you put in will be very influential to the result that will come out. Hence, if you put a garbage data, no matter how perfect the model will be, you will always end up with a bad result or a biased result. It's also the same thing. If you have a very good amount of data, but the model that you have been used is quite problematic or in a sense not well calibrated, well, of course, it will still end up with a garbage result. So I use this paradigm that anything that you put in, like a garbage in, you will always have a garbage out paradigm. So it's very important that you will have a very good background of your data, and you also know which type of model is appropriate. And however, it's very subjective. That's why in modeling, it's very important that if you have a modeler, you also know you have a collaboration with someone who is an expert on the field. It can be a biologist, an ecologist, an economist, or even a biochemist, right? So how does the pipeline of modeling work? So I showed you a very basic pipeline a while ago, but here's a more detailed thing I would like to share with you. The first thing that is usually used is to actually collect data. It can be different type of database coming from the GIS or the Geographic Information Center. You can actually have free database wherein they can be accessed onto, for example, WorldClim, wherein there are a lot of GIS maps that are used here. Even the 19 bioclimatic factors can be found here. And here are some of the factors that are commonly used for bioclimatic envelope modeling, or even the more updated versions of different raster data coming from different abiotic factors that can be used based, of course, on the organism that you are studying or of interest. So after you collect the environmental layer, it is very important that you also know the map or the occurrence distribution of the organism that you want to explore. So for that, where do you actually get the occurrence data? So there are a lot of ways to get the occurrence data. So sometimes if you're a researcher who's always out on the field, you know where to find them, you have a wide array of collections of coordinates where you have found them, then you can have your own personal data. Nowadays, go to Facebook, social media accounts, there are a lot of citizen science websites that are actually even telling that they have sightings or reports of a particular organisms that they were able to find. Of course, it's always nice to still use validated published literatures, right? That actually tried to report where they were able to find their biological organisms. Still, museums are very good source of data because most of the biological entities that are found in the field, we usually put them on the museums, right? And now there are a lot of online databases, but the most popular one is the use of the GB for the Global Biodiversity Information Facilities. Okay, so there are a lot of sources for that data, right? For the occurrence data. So, however, there are a lot of critical considerations that we need to remember when we talk about species distribution data, right? For example, what specific type of data should we use for a specific model? And here are some examples of data that are used. No? So obviously, different models will have different data they require to use. For example, the presence-absence data, wherein you were there on the site, you know that they were there, or it's expected to be there. However, they were still absent. All right. Next is the presence-only data. It means that you don't know if they will be really absent there. Most of the time, it was randomized, right? You go to a specific site and you found that organism on that site. So that's you have the presence only data. And then sometimes you can suspect probably they were there and you were able to find them. That's the presence pseudo absence data. But most of the model nowadays, and probably the model or the type of species distribution data that I'm used to, is the presence background data. We're in a specific raster or grid. You know them, you map them, and you also know the specific abiotic condition. That's the background of that data. Okay, so at the end, you will see a lot of very colorful maps, right? So that's the first critical consideration. Second consideration is that when is absence really an absence, right? Is that organism really absent because they are not there? Is that really absent because they really are not suitable for the environmental conditions that place have? So for that, there's no general answer or step-by-step procedure, but I base it on the paper published by Peterson in 2011, wherein for you to really know the true presence of that organism's place, wherein you need to do a lot of ground truthing and validation. You need first to have it accessed. You were able to really know in the field, particularly most of the ecologists, to really tell you, yes, that area is suitable for them. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, that's just enough for them to survive. You were able to actually know that that place is a good place for it to survive because there's no biotic competitors around, and you actually visited it. And this is the most crucial. You were able to observe them correctly. And then that's the only time you can say probably it's a true presence. Nonetheless, the others will always give you a bit of a doubt. And that's where those modeling will also play around. No? So that's why it's very important that you know which model will accurately suffice, right? The type of information and the background of collections of data that you have. Okay. Third consideration is how many species occurrence are needed. I found organism A thrice in my life. Is that enough? However, I found, for example, 100 data points. Is that more than enough? So those are questions that still need to be considered. It's kind of tricky, to be honest, especially when we talk about how practical it is and how easy it is to collect available records, especially those that are depending their data, for species distribution models. But I come up with, this is a very nice paper published in 2015, wherein they were trying to develop a lot of schemes and algorithms to find the minimum number of record occurrence to develop an accurate species distribution models, depending, of course, on the organism. I really encourage people to read this, all right? But here they were able to find like at least 3 is enough for as long as it is not biased type of data, all right? What do we mean by bias? Like you find it only in one place that all has the same information, or they are too near to each other. This is type of biased data, right? So yeah, that's my fourth question to consider. You need to ask the question, are my data biased? And because like what I mentioned, when you are working on a lot of technology nowadays, particularly modeling, you can be easily lured, like, okay, this is so easy. In 2 days, I can get an information. I can get a result, publish it, do some discussion and stuff. But it's very important that, like what I mentioned, garbage in, garbage out, to always be meticulous with the type of data that you will put into, because it can be prone to biases, especially, for example, like I told you, like if you find a record occurrence that is only focused on one place, is it enough to really inform you that that is really the most suitable habitat, right? So again, that's kind of tricky, but it's very important that you're not lured with this complicated technology and you're really sure with the data that we've been using. I can share with you some of this experience. When I was trying to look, for example, for data in the GBIF, I was so surprised. I will tell you the story about this. I thought I'm getting a lot of good data, and then I found out that there are some informations that are wrong, or sometimes they are data sets or coordinates that are invalid for the purpose that they have a different name codes, So yeah, so that's why it's very important that you really check your data. Last, are the spatial records accurate? Because I realized, for example, when you do modeling, most of the informations, especially when you try to go to the museums, they have vague, all right, or volatile informations. Sometimes like 5 miles west of, it's not clear. So you don't have real coordinates, because what you need to really put them on the map is an exact coordinates. All right. Sometimes the information tells you that it should be in the river, but when you put the coordinates in the map, like for example, just try to use simple Google Earth, you find them on a building. So here, that's why it's very important to always do a lot of ground truthing to check all these coordinates. And it's very important that as citizen scientists of the world, we even know how to do basic GPS system devices, so that especially for some scientists who always go out on the field to collect very good information using their GPS system. Okay, so after getting all these species occurrence data in layers, of course, that's the time that you put them all together in a particular model. And there are a lot of models that can be used. However, I'm very critical to really remind everybody that models needs to have a proper calibration. Most of the time when you start modeling, you always try to use the default setting, and there's always a tendency when you do that there will be overfitting of the data set. So, and then as you do modeling more and more, you will realize a lot of things that needs to be adjusted. But what I want to highlight here is that different model softwares that are currently available use specific type of data. And here are the different types of data sets that are used specifically. What I'm more familiar is the most popular one called the maximum entropy, or the maxent, this one at the last part of this table, because they use a very user-friendly algorithms, and they use present background, like what I've mentioned. No, so this is a very easy to follow, and they are now the most widely used. If you type the word maximum entropy modeling, probably in Google Scholar, you will find a lot of studies related to that, especially those that are related probably now to the pandemic or even on climate change. Okay, after having the model, of course, it's always nice to visualize the result through maps and improving them. No, what you can use is always the different GIS system. You can use ArcGIS mapping, QGIS, DiverGIS. There are a lot of mapping software that can be used so that you can project the result of the model that you got. Okay, so what I will share with you now is how did I apply species distribution modeling to slime molds. So what are slime molds? So I'm now proud to introduce to all of you here these very interesting group of protists, which live half of their life as an animal that are moving around the terrestrial ecosystem, eating all those bacteria or fungi or algae that are around the communities in the forest. And when the environment starts to become unsuitable for them, they start to live their life as a fungi, wherein they will really appear like fructification or fruiting body. So like what you're seeing now, I hope it's clear, this small clip I got from BBC, right? So what you're seeing here is the animal stage. So they're blobs and they're creeping around a particular substrates, and and yes, you see, they're eating these fungi or any dead organic matter also, no? So, and now what you see here, after they consumed most of the things that they can eat, they start to again morph, no, or to change their appearance to a more fungal-like structure that has a fructification. And usually the reason for that is they want to start to move, no, to disperse around, to release their spores, to go and travel, no, similar to pollen. They can be capable of long distance dispersal, right? So what I would like to highlight is that these organisms are now known to be the biggest microbial predators in the soil. All right, so you can find them anywhere actually, and there are around 100 or no, 1,000 more now of species of slimies that are found. And here are the specific type of substrates where you can even find them, all right? So, but probably what catches my interest is that these organisms can be a source of information regarding the evolution of primitive intelligence. In fact, in 2001, this is a very popular experiment. When you type slime molds, for example, in YouTube, you will probably see them creeping around a particular labyrinth. And what's more interesting is that they have a starting point here. It was able to come up and to find the solution to get out of the labyrinth in the shortest time possible. All right, so this paper actually by Nakagaki et al. Is very popular because now they really try to conclude that these slime molds has the potential to actually decide, no, even in a very complex path, no. And this can be the missing link, no, regarding the primitive intelligence because they don't have neurons. What they have are just groups of cells, multinucleated cells that are creeping around, right? Another experiment that I probably would like to talk about, no, is another popular experiment that was published in 2008. It will be very fast because it's so fascinating that I would like to share it with all of you. And this is something also related to climate change because what they did here is that they exposed the slime molds to time intervals, all right? And like, for example, at 12 o'clock, at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, all right, they're exposing it. However, at 4 o'clock, they always try to stop the time, or not the time, but to change the temperature. And what they observe is that when they stop the temperature at that specific time, the slime mold was able to also stop moving. All right. And then it seems that they keep on repeating that for several days, several weeks. And then finally, some of the scientists decides, okay, let us now, we will not stop at around 2 o'clock. We will not stop the temperature. We will keep the temperature ongoing. But what, to their surprise, what they observed is that that slime molds that they were looking at was able to anticipate that it will have still a change in their environment and will keep on stopping. So even if, for example, they stop the source of the temperature, the slime molds was still able to anticipate, okay, I need to stop. Hence, this paper was able to even suggest that slime molds are able to learn. Hopefully similar to us, right? Like they seems like they have the capability to have circadian rhythm similar to our sleeping patterns. Okay, but probably this will be the most interesting. In 2010, 11 years ago, when I was starting my PhD, this was the reason why I really studied them, is because they tried to put this slime mold over a petri dish, all right, for the 0 hour up to the 26 hour. And at the 26 hour, it created this one. It seems boring, right? But the thing here is that at the 26 hour, the slime mold was able to copy the complicated Tokyo railway system. And it is so fascinating because based on what I've learned, the Tokyo railway system, we have here our Japanese colleagues, you can correct me, took a lot of years to be established, like more than probably 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. But for slime molds, they were only able to copy it for 26 hours. Okay. So what I will now present to you are different case studies where I've used SDM or species distribution models in relation to the slime molds. So for example, here is a case study of Barbiella, and here are the colleagues that I've worked with coming from different parts of the world, from the US, from Russia, Philippines, Germany. And we're looking at the first case study of the Barbiella. They are rare species of myxomycetes that are only reported for the longest time on the northern hemisphere on a very cold environment. Preferentially, they want trees that are coniferous. All right. But only in 2017, we found this information when we did the modeling, that they can thrive also in other parts of the world, not just here in the northern hemisphere. There was a result of the model. They can also be found in Vietnam here, and here in part of Australia and New Zealand. What's interesting is that when we did this modeling, our colleague who went to Australia and Vietnam was also able to really validate the model and found it there. So for the longest time, for many years, we thought that this species is having a distributional limit, but based on the model, they can be found in other places. Why? Is it caused by climate change? Is it caused by their long distance dispersal? This is the thing that we're still investigating, right? Another one is this very interesting case study of Hemetrichia serpula. These are bright spored species of slime molds. During my PhD, I was able to find that they have a preference. Specifically, these biospecies has a preference over the tropical areas. Like, we cannot find them really exactly because the white zones there are the missing parts, but we were able to find them, the black parts, the positive parts, in most areas that are tropics. And to really validate it, we want to go, of course, in Africa. So it will really help us too, right? If you're on the field, you don't go on the field blindly anymore. If you have a model, you can validate the model by actually going exactly on the field and check it out, right? Another one is this study about Costa Rican slime molds, wherein they tried to model and find which areas in Costa Rica you can find the 5 most abundantly occurring slime molds. What is the purpose of this model? I will have that answered at the end of this presentation, because it is something also related to the study I recently did for the Philippines, right? But this is the latest modeling study that I have published not so long ago, a few months it was released. So what we're looking at are slime molds that are actually growing at the snowbanks. It means that after a snow melts, you will expect a specific slime mold called the Physarum albescens to grow on those substrates. And what's interesting is that we're seeing, because besides the model, we've tried to use other experiments like looking at the genetics and looking at the physiology, for example, of the organism. And what we see is that it seems that there are species that are so localized, all right? And it seems that they start to have this so-called adaptation on their specific place, these Niviculus mixos. However, our problem is we weren't able to validate, because of the pandemic, some of the places. And those that are marked in red are the target areas, because it seems that these areas in the part of the world are the highly most suitable areas for these Niviculus mixos to thrive. What's more of interest are the ones here in the Himalayas, all right? That was not yet surveyed for a very long time. And even here, at the areas of the Southern America that's not yet, or even here in Australia and New Zealand, where they are expected, according to the model, to be found. So it's very interesting for us. Hopefully, when the global pandemic is over, these are the things that we will do to really travel and see if these Niviculus mixos will be thriving there. And what I would like to share with you is a study that I did together with a bachelor student who studied in Vietnam, wherein we tried to look how climate change are now affecting the distribution of a specific slime molds, particularly this Diderma hemispericum. Why this species? Because this is an abundantly occurring species in the Philippines, and we want to see how it will be distributed, given different climate change scenarios. Here's the current climate, all right? What we see, so you see here the circles, these are the locations where we found them. And the model showed those that are in red and yellow, the other areas where we are expecting to find these species. So again, because of the pandemic, we weren't able to visit the area. But what's more interesting is that the model that we got seems to point out that the distribution of these tropical slime molds are affected by the seasonality in the country. And as an ecologist, I can validate that because what we observe is that they will always appear after a rainfall. Right, so it's always nice for us to go out on the field after the season. The season we're in after months of having heavy rain, it will stop a little bit, and then the sun will shine, and then we can definitely see those fructification on the field. Okay. And what's more interesting is when we try to model them under different climate scenarios, it seems that the range of these species will try to expand. All right. It will go to other places wherein we didn't expect them to thrive, particularly on most southern parts of the Philippines. What's more interesting with that is that most of these areas in the southern part of the Philippines are now having urban development. And hence, when we presented it, it's very important using this model, to really recalibrate the mindset of many policymakers to see how several factors, for example, when we try to deforest our forest ecosystem and how we manage our land just for the sake of economic development, that it can probably cost some organisms where they can expect it to be found, not to be found there anymore because of this too much development. Okay. So what is the take-home message of my whole presentation? Hopefully, bear with me. It will only take the last few minutes. The first one is, of course, there's a presence of large number of endangered and threatened species, right? Not just microorganisms. It can be the plants and animals that throughout the world, particularly in many Southeast Asian countries, we're really known to have a very diverse plants and animal species. And we need urgent conservation measures for that because they are the ones that are also affected by climate change. If we look at the One Health agenda, right, we see that they are really interrelated. And once you disrupt the environment, animals gets no place to live, they start to migrate, they start to spread diseases, they start to do zoonotic diseases. And what happens? Human health are affected, right? So second, that's what I already mentioned, we need conservation measures. We need to try to talk to politicians, hey, if there climate change really occurs, we need to conserve our resources, all right? And lastly, for these studies to be done, right? And because this will be the future, machine learning, artificial intelligence, big data sciences, this will be the future. People will not just work on the lab. And as we see, the pandemic brought us to that when we were deprived of the laboratory and the field to go out as researchers, we go on now to another form of research wherein we try to do metadata analysis, where we try to do in silico computer generated assisted data analysis. And hence, we need to start collaborating. Maybe you're a biochemist, an economist, a biologist, a climate change scientist. The way forward for us to really combat diseases, especially at the time of pandemic and especially of the climate change, is to start really doing our job, to collaborate and to talk about. And I guess this type of platform wherein we try to talk about and discuss this form is just a way forward. So again, thank you very much for your kindest attention and looking forward for a very fruitful discussion with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dagamach. All right. So you've talked a lot and you talk passionately. This is the field of your expertise. Yeah, you're very passionate. I like it. I just want to apologize in advance if I could not really summarize what you just said. Basically, what you just said is that you are developing a species distributions model where a method to predict potential, distributions of species. Yes,
correct.
Right. And you also talk about this concept where, an example of a frog when they can live in their comfort zone when certain moisture are obtained or certain temperatures are obtained, right?
Right.
And there are concept of BAM or BAM concept where there's biotic and abiotic suitable areas that influence species or organism movement, right?
Right. You know, that's what makes the niche concept, right?
That's what makes a niche concept. Yes.
The niche, like what I mentioned, when we talk about niche, it's like your comfort zone, right?
Yes.
When you're on a job, you want to know if that job is suitable for you. So you want to know if it's a comfort zone, right?
Yes, exactly.
Are the people around me really good?
Yes,
Is the environment really good? And am I capable to move to that place?
Yes,
so that's
yes.
similar to, right.
That's
exactly.
similar. I think that concept is also applicable in anywhere in our life, I guess.
Exactly.
Exactly. And you also mentioned about using computer algorithm data modeling, where you mentioned that what you need to pay attention when you work on data modeling is that you need to pay attention to the source of the data.
Right.
And also the method of the data, because if you have really good source, but you have really bad or really poor data modeling, the result is, as you mentioned, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly.
So in order to avoid that, so you need to really ensure, or you need to consider where you get the data from, and the method that you use. You mentioned method is presence background, I guess, the data that you mentioned that you prefer. Yes.
Yeah, I prefer the presence background.
Presence background.
What I always use, Arya.
Yeah, there are different the method that you prefer presence background as what you are used to. And in relation to data modeling, based on your expertise, based on your research, you use this data modeling to kind of research or observe perhaps the distributions and behavior of proteins. Right? Where I just came to my surprise, I just knew it's actually behave half animal and a half fungi. It is actually my first time, so I was surprised how when you show the video, it was kind of interesting when they move like animal, but
they are
but finally
crawling.
Creeping, crawling, and finally they disperse their spores like a fungi. This is amazing.
Exactly.
This is amazing. So, and you also mentioned some other protist species that you've been working working on, and how you collaborated with other researchers from different part of the world. And one of the messages the three messages, I guess, mentioned. Three messages that you want us to take home with us is how we need to prepare of there are a large number of endangered species that are threatened by climate change. And I guess to my kind of my personal opinion is how this protest can be a really good indicator whether the climate is changing or not. Based on your data, based on your data modeling.
That's what we are doing right now. We're currently under a German-funded project. We're looking at how this species is responding. The first step is actually the nidicolous mixos I was telling, but I cannot yet diverge the whole story because we're still on the verge of finding out. Right.
I gotcha. Okay, and that's why because there's potentially large number of endangered species threatened by climate change. We need some kind of conservative I would
conservation measure.
Conservation conservation measure, and there should be conservation measure. And the thing that conservation work cannot be done if we don't collaborate, right?
Exactly.
So collaboration is very important.
I think you got everything right. All right.
All right. Thank you. It was interesting, really interesting. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Nikita, much for your presentation. Let's moving on to our, last but not least speaker, Dr. Kamaluddin. Assalamualaikum, Dr. Kamaluddin. Are you there? Dr. Kamaluddin? Yes, Dr. Kamaluddin, are you there?
Yes.
Yes, Dr. Kamal, just a little bit, I just want to tell a little bit about you to our audience. Dr. Kamaluddin is an associate professor of soil and environmental science at the University of Putra, Malaysia. He earned his PhD from University Putra, Malaysia, and
in which he is currently teaching now. So without further ado, please help me welcoming Dr. Kamaluddin. Time and place are yours, Dr. Kamaluddin. Is everything all right, Dr. Kamaluddin?
Yes, yes. Assalamualaikum, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The Honorable Chairman of this conference and other Honorable guest and the participant are welcome for my presentation. So my presentation title is the effect of the biochar application for the minimizing greenhouse gas emission and impact on the climate change. So nowadays, due to the global problem, the agriculture food is problem for us. For this why, if you want to change, maintain the climate change, and if you want to increase the demand of the population of the world, so we need the proper agriculture practice. So due to the imbalance, fertilizer management, other soil forming factors, so day by day the soil degradation is going to happen. For this why, the yield also is decreasing day by day. So if you want to increase the yield and crop production, so we have to practice the good agricultural practice, like biochar application, the cultivar using, the tillage, water management capacity. So due to the excessive human land use, it will affect to the greenhouse gas emission, especially the carbon dioxide, the nitrous oxide, and methane oxide will be increased.
Thank you very much. So sorry to interrupt. Do you have presentation that the audience can see? The presentation, the PowerPoint, do you have PowerPoint so that everyone can see and learn from your presentations?
Yeah, so that I cannot see the slide.
Could the committee please help Dr. Kamaluddin to slideshow his presentation?
Here we cannot see the slide.
Yes, we cannot see your slide, Doctor.
Oh, shit.
Yes, I hope you could.
So have you seen the slide now?
Yes, this is good. We can see your presentation now. Yeah, please, you could proceed, Dr. Kamaluddin.
Okay, sorry. So my presentation title actually effect of the biochar application or minimizing the greenhouse gas emission and impact on the climate change. Due to the many factor, it will affect to the climate change, and this affect also the quality of the soil, and the degradation of soil also decreasing. Why this happen? Due to the improper the fertilizer management, other agriculture practice. So if we manage a good agriculture practice like proper biochar management, proper the cultivar, can minimize the greenhouse gas emission. So when people using the excessive fertilizer, like chemical fertilizer, so it will affect to the soil quality. And when the soil quality affected, also it will decrease the crop production. So for the soil, when it will affect the climate change, like the greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane is increasing. So it will also affect to the crop production. So how we can minimize due to the proper agriculture practice. So when we make the proper agriculture practice, then
Kamaluddin, I think we're having internet connection problem here. Could the committee help? Or is it just me who cannot hear Dr. Kamaluddin voice? Committee, Bu Kamaria. We lost Dr. Kamaluddin from our, online seminar. Dr. Kamaluddin, are you there?
Now is okay?
Hello, hello, yes.
Dr. Kamaluddin, what's happening? Is it?
I'm sorry. One of the computer is out of has the electrical problem.
I see. Is it black out there in Solo?
Not really, but there is some electrical faults.
I see. All right.
Now it is okay.
Okay.
You can continue.
Yeah, Dr. Kamaluddin, could you continue, please? Dr. Kamaluddin?
Dr. Kamaluddin?
Can you listen to me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. Just a little bit.
You can continue.
Yeah.
Can you share your screen again, or I should share?
Maybe someone just help Dr. Kamaluddin with the presentations.
Okay. So,
yeah, Dr. Kamaluddin will just focus
Can you see the slide now?
talk.
Yes.
No, sure.
Yet. So let me try to screen. Is it okay? Can
you can see the slide now?
Yes, we can, Dr. Kamaluddin, we can see it. Yes, please carry on, Dr. Kamaluddin.
So now we can proceed.
Yeah, maybe you just
okay, from this slide, you see when you see the time in the fasting, then concentration of the carbon dioxide also increasing. So when the temperature will be increased, also carbon dioxide also will be increased. So it will affect to our climate change. So when due to the sea rising level increase, then temperature also increasing. So as a result, our salinity also increasing. The drought status is increasing. And the ice melting increasing, temperature is increasing. So then as a result, the carbon dioxide, the methane, nitrous oxide increasing. So it will affect to the climate change. So but how we can reduce or minimize the greenhouse gas emission? If we can produce the more carbon sequestration, using the good agricultural practice by biochar application, the good variety, the good tillage, good fertilizer management practice, then they can produce the carbon sequestration, and it will helpful to reduce the global warming. So biochar is a organic soil amendments. Normally all over the world, the farmers are practicing the chemical fertilizer. So when farmers apply the chemical fertilizer, so due to the application of chemical fertilizer and excessive chemical fertilizer, it will affect to the soil quality and it will affect to the soil fertility. So when the nutrient not available in the soil, then crop production cannot go properly. For this why, if you apply some soil organic amendment like biochar, it will helpful to improve the soil quality, soil fertility, then we can get the maximum production. So how we can get the biochar? Actually, biochar is a carbon resource product, but we can produce using the pyrolysis system. So under the low temperature, like less than 700, and also the low oxygen concentration. So when if you produce the biochar, then we get the soil organic matter, the systematic qualities, and they can also produce the more carbon sequestration. So if you get the soil organic matter high and carbon sequestration high, then it will helpful to reducing the soil greenhouse gas emission and mitigate the climate change. So this picture, the different type the biochar we can use for the any crop production like the rice, oil palm, maize, rice husk biochar, the empty fruit biochar, foliage, corn, cobs, grass. So these all are the biochar helpful for the crop production. So when we apply biochar in the soil, so there is interaction with the plant and the soil system. So when we apply the biochar have a capacity, the nutrient availability. So when the nutrient availability is good, so they can release the more the element like nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, and so the microbial activity will be good. So when the microbial activity is good, they produce a lot of carbon, increase the carbon sequestration, and ultimately it will affect to the for the crop production. And in the soil, the greenhouse gas emission like carbon dioxide, the methane, nitrogen will be reduced. So when you apply the soil argument in the soil, so that means it will reduce the greenhouse gas emission and it will affect the climate change. Function of the biochar is a potential for the crop production. If you apply the what is the problem? In the soil, if the low fertile soil, or clean energy production problem, organic waste management problem, and climate change mitigation. So in this case, if you supply the biochar, so it will helpful to increase the soil health and increase the carbon sequestration, and it will help to reduce the greenhouse gas emission, and it will help to sustain the soil quality and the sustainable crop production. So how we can produce the biochar? Using the pyrolysis system. So there is two systems. One is the faster system and the slow system. If the want to produce the faster the biochar, so we need the temperature more than 500 degrees centigrade. But if you have the slow pyrolysis, the temperature will be the less than 500 centigrade. So if you develop the proper method to prepare the biochar pyrolysis, so then it will helpful to produce the soil organic matter, more nutrient availability, and it will help to increase the soil productivity and soil quality. So biochar affects the soil property and greenhouse gas emission. So from the picture we see here, if we apply the biochar in the field, so the porosity, the pH, soil organic matter, CAC will be the good condition, nutrient availability will be good condition, the microbial activity and other the microbial properties will be the good. So that means plant easily can get a lot of nutrient if you apply the biochar in the field. So, and when we apply the biochar in the field, that means they also produce the less the greenhouse gas emission. So it will affect to the climate change. So when we apply the biochar, we see the nutrient dynamics in the biochar. So they will the leaching of the carbon or nitrogen will be less, and leaching of the carbon oxygen will be less. So that means it will helpful to maintain the soil organic matter and also increase the soil and the productivity and for the agriculture in the field. So if we can convert the waste and burn, so from there we can get the lot of the carbon dioxide. So that means if you produce the burning and waste, so it will long time effect. So it will use the reduction of the greenhouse and also contribute to the global warming. So here we see one experiment we did under the incubation condition. So we apply here the biochar, 10 ton biochar per hectare with the lime. In this case, we see here the CO2 emission is higher control treatment. So if you minimize the biochar application, then we can also reduce the CO2 emission and we can also get the maximum yield. Effect of biochar lime treatment on yield contributing character of the coin. So here we apply the different treatment in combination with the lime. So 10 ton per hectare the rice as biochar. We apply, then we get the maximum yield. So but if you apply the more biochar, so that it will produce the more the greenhouse gas. So it will affect to the yield production. So when you make a combination the less biochar and less lime, so it will affect to increase the yield and also it will helpful to reduce the greenhouse gas emission. So this is the figure also, another experiment. We see here, if you apply the lime and the TSP, then we can get the less the CO2 emission and also it will helpful for the maximum yield. So here we apply the 10 ton rice as biochar and with the limestone and the triple superphosphate. So then the cumulative CO2 the emission are reduced. So this is the some researcher they did the research. So they found if we apply the proper biochar the rate and application method, so it also helpful to reduce the nitrous oxide, the methane gas, and it will automatically help for the climate the change effect. So here we see the some research result. If you apply the biochar, so it will significantly increase the soil quality and it will affect to the greenhouse gas emission, then it will affect the climate change. So here we see a research 2015-16, the young at 2020. So if they apply the proper method, 30 ton per hectare. In this case, they get the maximum grain yield for the corn production and also the security. On this side, the application of the biochar amendment, it can help to reduce the soil emission or the methane and carbon dioxide. And when the soil emission of the methane or carbon dioxide will be reduced, that means it will also reduce the global warming. There we apply the different composting, and also this also helpful to reduce the carbon dioxide, the methane, nitrous oxide, the ammonia. So that means it also reduces the greenhouse gas emission. Global warming potential. So this calculation we can get using the relative ability of gases called the global warming potential, and it we can make the calculation using this formula. That means global warming potential equivalent to methane multiplied by 28, carbon dioxide multiplied by 1, and nitrogen multiplied by 265. So from this picture we see here, if you apply the rice husk, that means it is not the biochar. And if you prepare the biochar from the global warming potential, around 40%, the reducing. So that means if you apply any fertilizer directly in the field, it will increase the global warming potential. But when we make a biochar from the rice husk or coconut husk or oil pump empty fruit branch, that means it will helpful to reduce the greenhouse gas emission, and also it will helpful to reduce the global warming potential. This is another data, the carbon sequestration. Here we see that we apply the treatment. One is the rice charcoal, another rice husk. Rice husk means just we can use the rice husk. This is not the biochar. And when we burn the rice husk, then produce rice charcoal, it is a biochar. So when we apply any biochar in the field, so it will help to increase the carbon sequestration. So if the using the biochar increase the carbon sequestration, that means it will helpful for the yield production. Conclusion of the presentation: application of biochar helping to reduce the greenhouse gas emission. It can reduce the around 40% global potential, increase the soil quality, and around 400% net carbon sequestration will be increased. As a result, it will increase the yield productivity. So the use of biochar nutrient sources can be considered one of the best management option for the enhancing yield productivity and sustaining the soil fertility for the long period.
Okay.
So for this side, if you want to manage the proper management for the farmers' practice, so we need the policy intervention and improve the dissemination techniques for applying the biochar nutrient source. And should be stagnant, not only for the increased crop production, but also to maintain the soil fertility and minimize the climate change impact. So this is all of my presentation. Thank you to all.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Kamaludin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Arya.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kamaludin. Just to kind of summarize what you just said, the climate change really threatened the food production, the future and the sustainability of our food productions as we are, we have ever-growing, growing populations. But we are faced not only by the climate change, but also and the climate change contribute to, and our agricultural activities contribute to, land degradations as well, where mostly agricultural activities contribute to increased greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and also methane. And one of the to kind of secure our food productions, you mentioned about good agricultural practices such as with the use of good seed, proper fertilization method and application, dose and application, plant protections, and so on. One of the things that you mentioned here that we really heavily emphasize on is the use of biochar. Based on your presentation, biochar is one of the viable organic amendment of soil that can be used to two things: mitigate climate change. To mitigate climate change by improving soil health, increase carbon capture and storage, reduce the greenhouse gases emissions, and to enhance or to increase crop yield, which finally or eventually enable us to provide food for our growing population. All right, I think that's all. Is that okay, Dr. Kamalvi? Did I summarize your talk?
Yeah, okay, thank you, Mr.
Okay, I'll give back to Kamalvi. Let's, ladies and gentlemen, dear audience, I hope you guys are still staying with us as we're moving on to Q&A sessions, and we've received a few, I think. Okay, I just Dr. Dagamat sent me a message that Dr. Dagamat had to go earlier because there is an school accreditations taking place, so he can't stay with that. He couldn't stay with us that long. So if any questions that is addressed to Dr. Dakamach, please, it will be collected by committee and then will be sent to his email. And let's just read from first questions. First questions from Dawan. The question is addressed to Professor Suzuki. Dr. Suzuki, are you there?
Yes,
All right.
I'm here.
Okay, yeah, let me read the question.
Yeah.
In your presentation, you explained that humans cannot live sterile without a virus. My question is, how can we defend against future viruses that may appear and mutate a lot due to climate change factors? That's the question, Doctor. Please. Dr. Suzuki?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have to.
Yeah.
I have to answer.
Yes. It's a good time.
Climate change, including CO2 gas content in the air. But in the, I'm such an report in the paper. So actually CO2 gas and the content in the air in the increase just when we observed in the 100 years the period, okay, time span in the 100, 10 decade in the range, okay, but in the 1 year range is very hard to catch up in whether in the CO2 gas in the increase or not. But I can understand, and so in the population number in the world increased in the year by year. Compared with in the 100 years ago, then the 5 times the increase, so larger number like now. So then we have then the aspiration rate in the so active rather than in the 100 years ago. Okay. In particular, then just since then, so then the industry in the industry revolution, actually the industry side in the so then the output content of CO2 then the incredibly higher. So then I think it's if and so then solve this problem, and one thing is so then the easy way then the condense in the CO2 gas and buried in the under the water or under the ground. This and so all the research in the going on in the world. I know this is one thing. But in the climate change, so then they contain a lot of elements. So at first, and we have to develop in this segment to segment. Right now, very hard to understand and which segment should we select. Because I'm biochemist, so and one of the scientists like to divide and pick up in the element against to in the state. So I think so then it takes a time to solve in the climate change. That's my opinion. How do you think?
Okay, Dr. Suzuki, you mentioned in order to defend it, to prevent or to deal with possibly,
prevent
the
possibility to prevent in the you mean so in the infection the disease. That's okay, because so we can refer or observe in the over our human beings activity over the 1,000 years. Over the 1,000 years, we have tried to defend against the virus, because maybe you know in Japan and so 1,000 years ago, actually in the Asuka era, that means that at the temple or Buddha in the Nara city, maybe you have seen in so big Buddha. In that case, actually infectious disease in the split out in the whole in the Japan island. But we have overcome against in the infectious disease, like getting in the mineral or other than the natural and the food or have a tea. So planting the tea garden and collect in the herb or green tea. Just in that time, green tea, that means so the tea plant in the one of the medicine. So right now in the more modern age, so then we have to study just refer to the natural product, and then the synthesize in the adequate in the compound.
Okay, so Dr. Suzuki, thank you. Just to kind of summarize, we just say, so we probably can expect that there will be maybe future viruses in the future. We human being, we've gone so much, we've gone through so much, challenges in terms of infectious diseases and other diseases for thousands of years. And what we can do is to prevent by eating healthy food, consuming, as what you just said on your presentation, consuming jamu and herbal medicines, eating healthy vegetables, and also you also emphasize on the consumption of green tea. Okay,
exactly.
I hope that answer the one questions. I hope that's answered the questions. Ladies and gentlemen, as we are constrained or limited by time, our time is actually we have to close at 12:30. I'm sure. Do we have more time, Dr. Kamaria? I hope we still have.
Can we add one more question live from the
chat? We have two more questions. Maybe is it okay if we just limit to
one or two?
Two questions. Okay, two questions. Okay. The second questions came from.
It will be from the participant. She want to ask live.
Oh, live. Okay. We have two questions. Okay, but the second question came from Rahman Jamal from Bapeda, Jawa Tengah, from Central Java. Professor.
I'm sorry, Mr. Arya. Participant wants to ask.
Okay. Live question.
Yes,
okay,
live,
all right.
live question.
Okay, cool. So please mute your microphone. Unmute your microphone, I mean. Okay. All right. Okay, please. Your question, please. Okay, I think is it student? Dr. Kumaria?
Yes. Maybe this is another one.
All right. Okay. Please name and your questions and to whom you address the questions, please. Okay. Still muted, I guess.
Yes, it's by the moderator. Please wait.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Still hearing. Okay. It's the interesting to question have to Dr. Penrose to say legal mandate signal clear about police support for immunization, which can also increase resource for patient infrastructure. So my question is how the legal mandates can increase the resource for patient infrastructure, doctor? Maybe that's my question. Thank you.
Well, the question is addressed to Dr. Penrose, right?
Yes, Dr. Penrose.
Yeah, your question was about
the legal mandates.
Legal mandatory on what?
Your statement can say the legal mandates can increase the resource for the patient infrastructure, like that in your slide.
Can increase.
You can ask me in Indonesian. I can still understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Speaking Indonesian is better.
Sorry, my bad.
Okay. I can understand.
I will translate. No worries.
Di slide dokter menyatakan tentang meningkatkan patient infrastruktur tentang yang legal mandate, dokter. Legal mandate signal clear police support.
Okay. So what I'm trying to say that it's very hard to mandate the COVID-19 vaccine in the United States is because it's not like law in the United States is quite different with the law apply in Indonesia or Malaysia or India. Because we have two different kind of systems. Like our legal system in this world, divided into two categories, which is United States, England, India, and Canada. We use common law, and then the rest of the world use the civil law. So it's really hard to imply mandatory legal systems regarding the COVID-19 vaccines because every state has different rules, and it's very hard to apply and enforce kind of like federal law to mandate the COVID-19 vaccines in the United States is because every state has different rules that rules their own state. So if you want to go to the federal laws like what they did back in 1905 is just quite different because the data support them to do that. But since the COVID-19 is not met the requirement for the descriptions to enforce the law based on that precedent law that we have before in chickenpox pandemic, back in 1905. So we cannot really rules that over here to enforce the COVID-19 vaccines all over the place in the United States. But maybe it's easier to apply the mandate vaccines to the country that has civil law, because you just brought up to the DPR or MPR and then pass the bill or pass the law and get the majority vote on that one, and then it becomes the law and it rules all the nations, right? So it's just quite different how you see this mandate vaccine could be applied federally in the United States, because we just don't have the same systems. The systems that rules in the United States is different with the rules that we have in Europe or in Indonesia. So it's probably easier to apply the mandate vaccines for the country that has a civil law system, because it just go to pass to the bill to the House of DPR or MPR to pass the bills, and then whenever they approve that one, and then it become a law and then enforce and has penalty. But over here, you cannot just do that. It takes forever to pass the bill in the United States. Especially you have to pass the Senate and pass through the House first. There's a lot of interest group over there. You know, it's not only just the political system over here, and the law system is totally different with Indonesia.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is, like, for the common law system, it's very, very hard to apply the mandate, the vaccine mandate, because that's totally different legal system to be enforced. We were talking about the cost, we talking about the long run, we talk about a lot of people involved, we talking about the minority interest, we talking about all the interest groups that gonna involve. It takes maybe another 5-10 years, I don't know, it could be longer than that, you know. I remember well, whenever Obama healthcare law was passed, was finally approved, it took like maybe 6 years or 7 years, you know, to get approved. When the LGBT law passed, it took maybe 25 years, maybe longer than that. It takes time and costly to pass just simple law, because it involves 51 states. But maybe it's easier to be applied, but the COVID-19 vaccine to be rules in the civil law country like Indonesia.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. I guess that's the answer. It was very clear that we have two different law between Indonesia and USA and perhaps Canada, and it's clearly that with the law that exists in the United States, the United States government cannot force its citizens, its people to get vaccinated because of the law that really rule. I guess it's a human right law. So, ladies and gentlemen, panelists, speakers, professors, doctors you've done and you've given us so much knowledge today. We are so sorry that we could not continue our Q&A session, as we are constrained or limited by time. And there are questions on a chat column. I hope committee could, gather these questions or collect these questions. Then to whom the questions are addressed to, please also give your answer. But unfortunately, because of time constraint, we have to stop. These sessions. So I apologize for probably things that did not run well. I'm so sorry for that. And I said thank you, my gratitude and my thankful to committee, to speakers today, Dr. Probandani. Thank you, you've been awesome. Dr. Suzuki, Dr. Penrose, Dr. Dagamat is not here with us anymore, and also Dr. Kamaluddin there. Thank you so much for your for taking your time, your energy, your effort, your knowledge, your expertise. I'd like to give it back to Master of Ceremony. Thank you. Please. Give applause to all the speakers. Thank you. Thank you. Back to Master of Ceremony, Fidel and Devita.
Thank you, Mr. Frankie Arya Saputra, for your valuable contribution on this conference and also moderate us on this conference.
Dear speakers, all participants, thank you for your valuable time for the first session. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, coming up to the last session, we are going to have a parallel session. For those who join the parallel session, please be noted that our session will start at 1:30.
The 7th International Conference on Climate Change 2021 is organized by the Department of Master Program of Environmental Science Postgraduate School of Sebelas Maret University, Surakarta, Indonesia, collaborating with the United Graduate School of Agriculture Science, UCSS, Gifu University, Japan. Thank you for your participation and see you at our next conference. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Very much, Suzuki, Professor. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, yes. Ya, iki berarti live ya? Mas, berarti live ya ini? Live kan? Udah.
Ya. Bu Kokom ini udah ya, Bu Kokom saya. Udah ya?
Udah live ya?
Bu.
Oke, untuk sesi paralel nanti please login for parallel session at 1:30.
For all the participants, please log in to the parallel sessions at 1:30 p.m. Use the email address and the link that will send on your email. And once again, for all the participants, please be noted that our parallel session will be start at 1:30 p.m. Please log in from your link that sent from your emails. Thank you.
Welcome to Master Program of Environmental Science, the one of the postgraduate program in the Postgraduate School Sebelas Maret University.
The vision of this department is to be an excellent department at national and international level through developing continuous learning. The missions of this department are to carry out education, researches, and community services based on the latest needs of the community through technology-based science transfer, problem-solving skill in the environment issues, and continuous dissemination of research results. The level 8 of Indonesian National Qualification Frame states that master program should generate the expert in the field of specific interest who have capability to develop science and technology, solving science problems through interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary research, and creating innovative works that have been tested and recognized nationally and internationally. Therefore, graduates' profile of these programs are becoming the subtle problem solver through interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary approach and accentuate environment preservation based on sustainability resources. The specific skill of the graduates is capable to administrate physical, biological, and social resources to gain the valid outcome and to preserve the natural resources.